Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's dive into this. Today we're unpacking an absolutely fascinating paradox involving some of the most expensive grapes in the entire world. Naturally, you'd probably assume the finest vineyards are planted in the richest, softest soil, right? Well, the truth is the exact opposite. We're going to explore exactly why the harshest environments produce the greatest results, and how an ancient and honestly totally overlooked group of people left behind a perfect blueprint for thriving when you're dealt a bad hand. You see, when a grapevine is planted in beautiful, fertile soil, it actually gets a bit lazy. It keeps its roots really shallow, just because the water is right there at the surface. But that makes it incredibly vulnerable to even minor droughts. On the flip side, vines planted in harsh, rocky soil, they're forced into straight-up survival mode. Desperate for water, they drill deep down, sometimes dozens of meters through solid bedrock. That intense struggle creates a wildly resilient vine, and it actually yields the most complex, premium fruit. The struggle literally creates the value. It's wild to think about.
And you know, this whole rocky soil concept applies directly to us humans too. Just think about some of the greatest soccer legends in global history. We're talking icons like Ronaldinho, Drogba, Pelé, and Maradona. While a lot of players come up through highly polished European academies, these extraordinary talents started out in deeply impoverished neighborhoods. They definitely weren't playing on manicured grass, they played in muddy slums and rough, uneven streets. They developed an unbreakable tenacity because of their rocky soil, not in spite of it. They learned to navigate failure and harsh conditions early on, making them completely unstoppable on the world stage.
So that brings us from our modern metaphors to a really fascinating historical case study, the tribe of Sanghyun. If there was ever a group of people who inherited the ultimate rocky soil starting position, it was them. They were one of the 12 tribes of Israel, but their story is almost always completely overshadowed by the larger, much more successful tribes. They were dealt a historically unfair hand, trapped by circumstances and ancient decisions they didn't even make themselves.
Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is that we can actually trace Sanghyun's multi-generational trauma across centuries. It all starts way back in the text of Genesis 34 with this violent, totally unauthorized revenge mission led by Sanghyun and his brother Levi. Fast forward to Genesis 49, and their father Jacob remembers this on his deathbed. By Joshua 19, the consequences of that ancient mistake become geographical. And all of this culminates in a dramatic life-or-death choice centuries later in 1 Chronicles.
Just imagine standing at your father's deathbed for a moment. You're expecting a traditional, warm blessing to secure your future, right? But instead, Sanghyun receives a punitive prophecy. Jacob declares, "I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." I mean, it's essentially a curse. Because of an action taken centuries before by their ancestors, the entire tribe is told they will have no unified home. They are destined to be scattered. Imagine the massive psychological weight of starting your journey knowing your own patriarch essentially predicted your total dissolution.
And that ancient curse becomes a harsh geographic reality in Joshua 19. When the promised land is being carved up and distributed, 11 of the tribes get their own distinct carved-out territories. But Sanghyun? They're told their inheritance falls entirely within the borders of the massive, incredibly powerful tribe of Judah. Judah got too much land, so they essentially just tossed Sanghyun in the corner. Sanghyun was treated like a younger sibling forced to live in the back room of their older brother's mansion. They had no independent borders, no real autonomy, and a completely overshadowed identity.
So what do you even do when you're placed in that kind of situation? Their reality was pretty grim. They could do nothing, wait around, and naturally be absorbed by Judah's massive cultural footprint. Essentially, they'd lose all their unique identity and completely fade into the footnotes of history. If they simply accepted this unchosen circumstance and just complained about their rocky soil, extinction was absolutely guaranteed.
But here's the thing. They refused to accept it, and this is exactly where the story gets incredibly inspiring. In 1 Chronicles chapter 4, we see their massive turning point. The text says, they went to the entrance of Gedor, to the east side of the valley, to seek pasture for their flocks. Instead of giving up, instead of wallowing in the fact that they were destined to be scattered and swallowed up, they boldly got up, they packed up what they had, looked toward the eastern valley of Gedor, and took aggressive action to find a way to survive. They refused to let an ancient curse dictate their final chapter.
What is so amazing to me about this choice is the sheer agency involved here. They didn't have a guaranteed map, and they definitely didn't send out an advanced scouting party. They were driven purely by the absolute necessity to survive. They knew staying meant slow historical erasure. It was a complete leap into the unknown, fueled by the desperate hope that a pasture actually existed out there to sustain them.
And this brilliantly illustrates the reward for that kind of audacious action.
The very next verse tells us the outcome of their blind leap. They found rich, good pasture, and the land was very broad, quiet, and peaceful. The irony is just beautiful. They left the cramped, stressful backroom of Judah and discovered this lush, peaceful pasture that was already there, just waiting for them to claim it. But they never would have seen it, let alone enjoyed it, if they hadn't first made the terrifying decision to walk out into the unknown.
Now, this kind of blind action has a specific definition in historical texts. According to Hebrews 11, this is the very definition of faith. It's taking action based on what is hoped for, before the path or final destination is fully visible. Faith isn't waiting for the entire map to be drawn for you, it's having the conviction that the pasture exists and moving your feet while you're still standing in the rocky dirt.
History is absolutely filled with these profound leaps of faith. Think of Abraham leaving Haran without even knowing his final destination, or Naomi leaving Moab, or Joseph and Mary fleeing to Egypt in the dead of night. And we see it today too. Think of immigrants leaving everything they know to move to a completely new country, like America, without a safety net. They're driven by the hope of finding better pasture for their families. It's the exact same human spirit at work.
Ultimately, the source material leaves us with a stark contrast between two choices we all face when we're dealt a bad hand. You can sit in resentment, you can remain trapped by inherited trauma, past mistakes, and limits you didn't even choose. Or you can step into the unknown. You can take action to discover hidden pastures of grace and opportunity. Fighting your own gator might mean a new dedication to a place of prayer, seeking wisdom in the Word, or simply refusing to let your current boundaries define your future.
As we wrap up this explainer, the story of Simeon leaves us with a really provocative question. Will you stay seated in the rocky soil, or will you step forward to find your pasture? We all have areas of life that feel totally out of our control. The pasture is out there, waiting, but it requires drilling deep and taking a leap. What kind of roots are your current struggles forcing you to grow? Think about that. Thanks for exploring this with me.